ever believed something, you were so convinced of something that you were absolutely sure of that something. Then, when you shared the information with someone, they just didn't get it. They didn't understand your perspective, they didn't understand why you thought that way, and they just couldn't see what you saw. I remember when my son was 6 months old, I knew something was up. I knew something was different about him. As a mom, I felt it and I believed it. So I told a few family and friends, and they didn't understand what I was thinking, what I saw. They said, you know what, he's a boy, he does things differently. But that wasn't good enough, so I took him to the doctor, and again, I was told there was nothing different about him. But I knew it. So after 3 diagnostic appointments, finally someone listened to me and we found out that he had autism. It is well documented that many African American children are diagnosed at a later age and stage compared to their white peers. This can be for a number of reasons. Some have a lack of access to quality healthcare, and a lot of us just have a stigma when it comes to disabilities, and we are resistant to diagnosis. A later diagnosis means that there are missed opportunities for treatment and interventions. In the next video, you'll meet a beautiful family. You'll hear about Gabrielle and her husband, Devin's journey. Gabrielle knew that there was something different about her son, and she shared that information with her husband. And you'll hear how denial impacted their family's dynamic. As a reminder, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe today. You don't want to miss any of our future videos. It's time for the video. Sit back and relax. Let's go.
Hi, my name is Gabrielle DeQueer.
And I'm Devin DeQueer.
And we have 5 children. We have 3 girls and 2 boys, and our youngest sons, Princeton and Logan, are on the ASD spectrum. We found out that they had autism when we realized that they weren't hitting a lot of the milestones when we were taking them to the doctor's office. I was also a preschool teacher before joining the military, so I knew some of the signs and the symptoms to look out for when it came to ASD. My perspective on finding out about our sons with ASD was, it didn't surprise me. I was very accepting of it, and I just was ready to help them as best as I could. It was a little disheartening at first because you have all these dreams and these expectations for your children, and when you find out about them having any type of delay, it kind of puts a dagger in your heart because you want them to be the best version of themselves that they can be. But I found out after the fact that they can still be that as long as you have help and you guide them and just allow them to blossom the way that they are supposed to naturally, and stop comparing them to other kids.
Well, when I first was found out that they could possibly have autism, I was in denial about it. I thought that maybe it was just because they were around me all the time due to us being a military family. My wife is gone a lot, so I just assumed that, oh no, they'll be okay because, he's just with me and he's not around other kids, so that's probably the reason why he's not, being able to hit certain milestones and things of that nature. So initially I was just like, no, that's not what it is. And once I started to pay attention and do my research on autism and looking at the behavioral aspect of things when it comes, specifically our first child, Princeton, I had to just, I pretty much was accepting it, a little bit, and then when the diagnosis came, it was just like, yeah, this is what it is. But still, I didn't want to accept it, to be honest. So that's just how it was for me initially.
When my husband was in denial about it, I was getting pretty angry. When Princeton was about 2.5, I voiced some of my concerns with his pediatrician. And his pediatrician was like, well, he's too young. We don't want to put a label on him just yet. So when he turns 3, we'll pay a little bit more attention. But Princeton wasn't talking. He started walking just a little bit late. He didn't have full sentences, but he did still have a lot of echolalia. So if I would say, Princeton, how was your day? Princeton will say, hey, how's your day? Or if I said, Princeton, what is that? He would say, what is that? He wouldn't give me, it wouldn't be a call and response conversation. So when I first told my husband, hey, I think our son is on the spectrum, he was like, no, he's fine. He's going to be okay. We'll work with him at home. And I said, okay, but he's not hitting all of these milestones. And he was like, he's just fine. You can't compare him to other kids, pretty much validating what the doctor said. So I was like, okay. A couple more months went by, and we would take Princeton to the playground often. And there would be so many kids his age because we were overseas in Japan, and the little kids who were not at the daycare, they didn't really have any other place to fellowship. So we will always go to the playground he can meet other kids and interact, and there were quite a few other kids his age there. A lot of them were talking, pointing, running, doing all these other things that Princeton wasn't doing. And I brought that to my husband's attention, and he was still like, he's not 3 yet, let's give it some time. But I was growing a little bit more impatient. Once Prince was about 3.5, we ended up moving from Japan to Jacksonville. And this was around the heart of COVID. I was pregnant with Logan, and the world stopped. And when the world stopped, I think that's when we realized even more and more that Princeton just wasn't hitting his milestones like he was supposed to. So I had nothing to do, and I'm researching heavy on what ASD is, what Asperger's is, the spectrums, being verbal, nonverbal, all these different categories of ASD, and I'm almost 100% certain at this time that he has autism. I take him to the doctor, and the doctor, I was explaining my concerns to her, and she was like, I don't think he has autism. And I'm like, I'm telling you, my son has autism. I'm not asking you, I'm telling you. And she was like, well, I see that he's doing this, because she's going down the questionnaire that they give you at your 3-year checkup. And she's like, well, he's doing this, he's doing that. And I'm like, but he's not doing all these other things. And she was like, I don't think he has autism. And I was so mad because she wasn't listening to me. And then my husband was thinking the same thing, and he wasn't listening to me. And when you know your children, you know your children. You know what they're capable of. And you can tell that Princeton wanted to talk. You can tell that he wanted to, he didn't want to be scared of loud noises, afraid of loud noises. He would try to eat foods, but then he was very reluctant because of how it smelled or how it tasted or how it felt. And you can pick up on his sensory his sensory sensitivity. And one day I was setting up all these like little appointments behind my husband's back, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go get his hearing checked, because maybe he can't hear me very well. And we did that, and his hearing passed. And then I come home, and my husband's like, well, what did the doctor say? And I'm like, he can hear. And he's like, I told you he can hear. And I was like, yeah, I know he can hear, but if he can hear, then that's a bigger problem to me. But I don't think that it clicked with him. I just think that he was like, okay, that's one thing. So it's validation that he may not have autism. And so we ended up, I ended up looking for places that could diagnose him, or at least give him an evaluation. And there were only 2 places in Jacksonville at the time that would diagnose children with autism. And one of them were closed due to COVID, and the other one was open still, surprisingly. And I called them, and the receptionist told me to fill out the questionnaire. So I filled out the questionnaire online, and I'm waiting, a couple weeks to hear something back, because once you fill out the questionnaire, they're supposed to give you a call back, and I don't hear anything. And I'm starting to grow impatient now. And I took him back to a doctor's appointment because the doctor wanted to follow up on his hearing test. And we followed up, and I was like, I still think that he has autism. And she's like, no, I don't think so. So as I leave the doctor's office, I'm mad, I'm crying, because I'm like, nobody is listening to me. And as I'm driving on my way home, I look to the left and I see the other place that does diagnosis for autism. And I walk in there. First I call, and as the phone is ringing, nobody's answering, but the website is saying that they're open. And I'm passing it, and there's 2 cars right there in front of them. So I know that it's open. So I'm driving, and then I bust my U-turn to go to this place, and the receptionist is there, and I'm crying and I'm mad, and the world is shut down, and I know that something's wrong with my child, but nobody's listening to me. And I just bust out in tears, and the receptionist didn't know what to do. And she's like, how may I help you? And I'm like, there's something wrong with my child, and nobody is nobody's trying to diagnose him. Nobody is open to do an evaluation. At this time, they were like, if there is any place that is doing an evaluation, the nearest place is Orlando, and they were trying to send me to Orlando, and I didn't have time because I'm in the military and we move a lot. So I'm like, I need some answers now. And the director of this place just so happened to be there. And when she was there, she was like, okay, calm down. I'll see you next week and we'll do an evaluation. And I was like, okay, wonderful. I go home, and I still hadn't told my husband just yet that he has an appointment. And a friend of mine asked if she could stay over. She's in the military too, and they're getting ready to move. So she has a son that was a little bit younger than Princeton, and he comes around and he's talking, and him and Princeton are interacting, and they're playing, and they stayed with us for about 2 days. And then when they left, Devin was like, I do finally see what you're saying, and I do think that he might have autism. And I said, okay, wonderful, because he has an appointment in 3 days to get evaluated. And he said, okay. And I said, okay, honey, I would like for you to come with me to this evaluation. And he said, okay. From then on, the developmental pediatrician, she was asking us so many questions. We were in this office for maybe 5 hours. There were like over 1,000 questions that we were asked. Not only did she have this questionnaire that was like a book long, but she also had toys, and she was interacting with Princeton and trying to see these different skills that Princeton had. And she was still asking us questions. But then once we finished with the evaluation, she was like, okay, I'm gonna tally up all these scores, and then I'll get back to you in 2 weeks. So once she tallied up the score, she called us a little bit less than 2 weeks later, and she said, I wanted to let you know that your son, it does have autism. He has level 1 autism, meaning that he's high functioning. Now at that time, I didn't really believe in the functioning system, and I still kind of don't, because I feel like they can eventually get to where they need to be if they have help and enough help and early intervention. And she was saying we believe that he might develop language. Princeton was speaking, but he only was speaking with his echolalia and a little bit of gibberish. So sometimes he'll be like, oh, sippy cup, or mommy, the blue hat. And it wouldn't be sentences. And we kind of just, we took it and we ran with it. After we got his diagnosis, we were immediately able to put him in ABA. We were immediately able to put him in speech therapy, occupational therapy. He did feeding therapy at one point. And when I say it was day and night, it was day and night. At 4, he wasn't really speaking. He still had his echolalia. At 5, now he says so many words. He knows how to have a conversation with us, and he's come such a long way. He's in kindergarten now. He did the preschool evaluation through our state, and they pointed us in the right direction for him. So he was able to go to preschool pretty early, just so he can get that experience with interacting with other kids and integrating and trying to calm him down when he is faced with some of the sensory problems that he has. And Devin, once he found out that Princeton had autism, he jumped on it. And he takes him to every appointment, every therapy, anything. He's right there front and center. I couldn't ask for a better spouse. And the fact that he does support, our sons in the best ways possible, it's a blessing, because I know a lot of people who struggle doing it with only one child. Although he was a little apprehensive at first to come into grips with his autism diagnosis, once he found out, he was all in. He just needed that something from the doctor or something from somebody who was certified to confirm that. But once he found out, he was all in. I was 10 toes out at first, because I was like, if he continues to be in denial about Princeton having autism, I can't stay, because my main focus and my main concern was making sure that Princeton got the help that he needed. I wanted my son to talk. I wanted him to be able to interact with other kids. I wanted him to, get invited to birthday parties and play sports. And I wanted that as soon as possible. And I didn't want to delay it anymore. So I was 10 toes out. But once Devin saw that, he immediately jumped right in and was like, you know what? Nope. We're both going to handle this together. So that's one thing I can say I definitely appreciate about having my husband around, because I couldn't imagine doing it without him.
So the biggest challenges, once we were given the diagnosis for Princeton, was then it's like it's pretty much learn how to parent all over again. Mm-hmm. Because it's different from my 3 girls, mm-hmm. and now having a child that's diagnosed with autism. So everything we thought we knew, and I know for me personally, everything I knew from being a parent, it's like I had to
unlearn it.
Yes, like wipe the slate clean, mm-hmm. and then it's like 100 times more patience, understanding that they're not gonna behave the same way as our older kids did when they were younger. Mm-hmm. So that was the biggest challenge. And then on top of that, being out in public with a child with autism and knowing that other people don't understand autism like that, or kids on the spectrum, and not wanting your child to be labeled or picked on or treated differently because of that, or to be looked at like, oh, your child is bad, and then having it's like an embarrassment because of the way that they're viewing your child, but they don't understand what's really going on. Mm-hmm. That was my biggest thing. And so it's just like I just wanted to protect him, mm-hmm. From that. But yeah, it was tough. It was tough. Like my wife said, she was ready to be out because I was in denial at first. But I love my kids. I love my family. I just wanted the best for them. Once the diagnosis was there, we're just like, okay, we just got to do what we need to do, mm-hmm. to get them what they need. And yeah, that was the biggest thing, you know. Like as far as like a turnaround, you know, in our relationship, it was really just
a matter of him getting
a
on
matter,
board.
yeah, just a matter of me understanding, you know, and educating myself on it. And once I put everything together from the research and just kind of putting the puzzle pieces together, that's when I understood, like, no, this is like, we have to do what we need to do to make sure that he has what he needs. So now having 2 sons with autism, you know, obviously it was easier, you know, for us when it came to Logan, because we already, you know, had our experiences with Princeton, although it's still very different. It's still like night and day, even with them, even though they're both on the spectrum, they're 2 totally different personalities and everything. So being parents to children with autism, it's hard to explain, but I just know like the average parent just really couldn't truly understand, because it's like one day can be one thing, the next day it can be something else, and you have to have the patience to understand that you're literally learning on a day-to-day basis.
We tried to go to therapy for it, and nobody could help us. We spoke to one therapist, and we were like, well, our son isn't eating, you know, we cook and he's not eating certain things, and we're trying to juggle our schedules and our work. We had no work-life balance. Princeton did not sleep throughout the night until he was about 3.5, and even still, it's a challenge at 5 years old for him to sleep throughout the night. He still wakes up twice throughout the night, every single night. Logan, he for the most part sleeps throughout the night, and he does have his days when he wakes up. But we tried to go to the therapist, and we're like, hey, you know, this is what happened, we need help. And we're explaining our situation to her, and she's like, oh, that's tough. Or, oh, it's busy over there. We're like, you know what, we're just gonna have to try and navigate this our own way, because we realized that we have a unique dynamic that a lot of people can't understand.
Yeah. Truly, you know, we found out real quick that there was really no one who could really guide us on how to tackle, you know, our particular circumstances. Yes, our circumstances are very unique. You know, being a military family, you know, with 5 kids and 2 on the spectrum, it's literally on us, you know. You have to make a lot of sacrifices. It's a lot of sacrifices that come with it, you know. As my wife said, you know, me, myself, I'm gonna put them first. So I know we both already have to make sacrifices being a military family, and then having 2 kids on the spectrum, even more sacrifice comes with that. So like me, I had to pull back career-wise because my kids need to go to therapy and to go to their speech therapies, occupational, school and everything, and someone has to be there to make sure they get what they need. So that's a challenge that came along with it, but that was a sacrifice that was necessary and I was willing to make. And you know, we just do what we need to do to make it happen. Yeah, we kind of went through it all. You know, you gave the hug. She's gonna